Hey everyone! You thought that the music was playing, but no. This is the podcast that you chose, and it is Jakey Boy here. Guys, I've got news for you. Over 1,000 people have discovered this podcast. Say what? I can't believe that. I mean, that's got to be something to do with, the 7 people know the rest of the world, that law that exists. I don't know if it exists, but, something like that. I don't know that many people. And I'm just like, wow, I've only been doing this podcast for a month and a half. Over 1,000 of you? Woohoo! There's also one listener, a new listener from Russia. So I've been onto Google Translate, and I would like to say to you, Privyet. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Now, this is the first reactive episode I've done. So I'm switching up the format. I'm trying different things, and every week I'm thinking how to make this podcast better. So I hope you enjoy it. It's slightly different in that this person has just got back from an expedition. They've just landed in the UK, and then we've jumped straight onto the podcast. So it's super fresh. And for that reason, I absolutely love this conversation. This conversation, I spoke with Matt Mason. Now, Matt is a Royal Marine who has done 3 tours in Afghanistan. He's rowed across 4 oceans with 3 world firsts, and he's an expedition leader at Ocean Revival Adventures. In this conversation, we talk about his most recent expedition because Matt has just returned from rowing the Indian Ocean from Australia all the way to Africa. What? Yeah. Him and his team covered 4,500 nautical miles in this world first. I mean, when we got onto the phone, it was fresh because Matt's body was still aching. He was still smiling, still chirpy and everything. He'd just been to the freaking gym. I was like, wow, check this guy out. He's got loads of energy about him. And in this conversation, we spoke about what the Royal Marines ethos can teach us about mindset and humility, how a near fatal capsize, boiling hot weather conditions tested the team and just being at the mercy of Mother Nature. Also, how to manage morale when you're stuck on a boat with 3 other guys way out at sea. And also how to do something that has never been done before and how to approach a world first. We also speak about more personal things like Matt's childhood and how feeling a need to prove oneself can result in great accomplishments. So I hope you guys really enjoy this episode, and let's go on with the podcast. Matt, thank you very much for joining me on this episode. Really happy to have you on, mate.
Yeah, mate, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
All good, all good. You've just got back last week from your row across the Indian Ocean, world first, Australia to Kenya. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling tired, exhausted, euphoric, happy. You name it, every emotion you can feel. I'm sad it's ended. I'm happy it's ended. And all these confusing feelings that come in at the end of a major expedition. But yeah, feeling good, feeling really good. Just glad to be back with the family.
And I was really surprised earlier when we had a little chat on the phone that you've just come back from the gym, had your protein shake. I was expecting to see a man a bit weathered down.
I know. I think I've learned the hard way. I've come back from expeditions before where I've sort of took a little bit too long on the other side to rest, and it's just harder to get back into it. So getting back, getting in the gym, getting back into the routine, because routine's everything for me. Is That's the thing I've got to do. So as soon as I got back, the next day I was in the gym, just lightweight, light duties if you like, just walk running, bit of light weights, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good already.
Awesome, mate. Good on you. Well, I wanted to start with this one.
I'm very interested in you and your character. So, as a man that's rode across four oceans, you've done three world firsts. What is it in your formative years that has shaped the man you are today to accomplish these sorts of feats?
I mean, that's a really good question. And I've been asked that a few times, and sometimes sometimes you just don't know. You don't know what's happened in the past that drives you now. For me, I grew up in a working class town, Accrington in Lancashire, and people like me just don't do this sort of stuff. Very working class, not wealthy. To get into any expedition world is any expedition sort of environment where never mind just doing them, never mind leading them, is exceptionally difficult. So I think part of it is that trying to prove to myself that I can do it every time. The challenge of each expedition is enormous. So just rowing one ocean is huge. Trying to row them all or try and row three or four is just ridiculous. And it's something that you sort of get it between your teeth, don't you? You think, oh, it's too big of a challenge. This is going to be amazing if we can pull this off. And I've just got a mindset where I've said I'm going to do it, and I just want to sort of chase it and try and achieve it. Yeah, that's where I'm at, really.
Is there a moment for you where it's like you're this working class lad, you see yourself as someone that can't go and achieve these sorts of things or can't go on expeditions, and then it just changes and suddenly you do? Or what's that process of going from that young lad you were to the man you are now who's doing multiple expeditions and world firsts?
But I think it sort of clicked after the first one that I organised and led, which was my second ocean row. So I did one back in 2014 with a guy called Simon Chalk, who's probably one of the most experienced ocean rowers on earth. He's done 10 oceans now. And that was sort of a pay for place. So you pay a lump of money and you just sit on a boat and row. And that was my first sort of glimpse of expeditioning. And it worked out to be the cheapest way to do an expedition as well, because you're not spending the hundreds of hours chasing sponsors and all that sort of stuff. Once I'd done that, you gain a little bit of experience sort of on the water. And then we organised to row from New York to London in a world's first back in 2020. Started that process in 2018. And then all of a sudden, sponsors start coming in, but it's off the back of, unbelievable, a huge amount of hard work. You work until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, whilst holding down another full-time job every day, getting out, getting the coverage, doing events, all that sort of stuff. And it was a second full-time job pretty much. But you suddenly realize if you put the effort in, you really can achieve it. And it was at that moment it clicked. You can do anything you want really, as long as you're willing to put the graft in. And it's not just a little bit of graft; it's life-ending graft to an extent. You do not have a life because your life is just completely taken over by trying to achieve whatever it is you've set out to achieve. And for me, it's crossing oceans. So once we got that first one there, that second one done, you sort of know what you're doing. You built up a bit more experience, and then it comes a little bit easier. You know what to say in meetings. You know how to approach sponsors. You know what sponsors want to see and what they want. And it just becomes a bit easier. So once you've done the third one, all of a sudden you're on the fourth one, and you've built up a lot of contacts, you've built up a lot of relationships, and they know that you're going to work exceptionally hard for their brand. So they're a lot more likely to stay with you. So I think it was probably after that, the first row that I led, where I realised, if you start putting the effort in now, it'll pay dividends in the future.
Yeah, that's bloody good on you for going for that first one, because sometimes it's that first step that's the trickiest thing when you're like, oh God, you're not experienced, or you've never done this sort of thing before, or you don't have the money to be able to fund a big expedition like that, and then taking that first leap is sometimes what sort of catapults the momentum that keeps you going. You're like, oh, right,
Oh
I've
yeah,
done one now, and so maybe I
completely.
could do another.
And it is that first step is the hardest. It's announcing that to the world that this is what you're going to do, even though you've no idea how you're going to do it. Holding yourself accountable, and other people holding you accountable as well. That does help. But it's small steps. It's you're not. It's not a giant leap. It's announcing. Then it's right. How are we going to do this? Speaking to people, learning from people, asking for advice, not being scared to ask for advice. And what you find is, certainly in the expedition world, the minute you sort of say you're going to do something, and you go about it the right way, and you approach people nicely, not demanding, just for advice, then a lot of people will come along and actually help you, not just give you the advice, but they'll give you contacts. They'll do as much for you as they can physically and mentally or emotionally, however they want to support you. So, as long as you're good and you're nice and you're willing to be a little bit, there's got to be a lot of humility there. People step up and give you a massive hand for sure. Well, that's what I've found in the expedition sort of industry world, if you like.
Yeah, definitely. I think like in the world in general, just being a good person is like something that's massively looked over. Like you might not have all the skills or all the experience for like whatever job or whatever it is, but like if you're a good person, then like likely it is that person's looking at you and they're like, do I want to work with this person? Like, do I want to get into business with this person? Do I want to be on Zoom calls with them every morning? And like, if you're a good, approachable person, then likely it is they'll be like, yeah, I'll have a coffee with them. And
Absolutely, yeah. And I've when I speak to you speak to a lot of people as well, and business leaders, and when you go into colleges and schools and all that sort of stuff, and speak to teachers, and the one thing that they always say is attitude is everything. It doesn't matter what skill set. Obviously, it does sort of matter what skill set you bring into the party, but if you've got a great attitude, you can't teach attitude. If you've got a great attitude, then you'll go far. But if you've got a poor attitude with some skills, you're not going to go as far as as the guy with a great attitude that can learn the skills. So attitude is everything.
you spoke about humility a bit, and it reminded me of when we were just speaking 20 minutes ago. You spoke about how there's this training you've had as a Royal Marine to be humble, that's sort of like inbuilt in your psyche. But then you're also this expeditionist that you have this feeling where you need to legitimize yourself in the expedition industry. Um, is there a bit of a theme there throughout your life? This idea of like needing to legitimize yourself, and is that some sort of driver behind all of your massive accomplishments?
Potentially, yeah. I've not really analysed it too much because I'm just a bootneck, I'm just a Marine, but well, just a Marine, I'm a Royal Marine, that's an achievement in itself. But one of the cornerstones of being in the Corps is the humility. You don't shout about what you do, you don't shout about what you've done, you don't really even tell people you're in the Corps, you just say I'm in the military. And I've spent my entire adult life in the Royal Marines. I joined at 18 and I'm still in now. So it's, that attitude and that ethos is really strong within me. So I found it really hard to, I've done 5 ocean crossings now in a rowing boat, and people have said, why have you not done podcasts? Why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing that? And the big part of that is, one, you've got to do the humility side, is you don't want to gob off about it. But the second was, well, the main reason really is, I've never felt uh, legitimate enough within the exhibition world, within the ocean rowing world, to sit on a podcast and just talk about it until the last one that I've just done, the Indian Ocean, where after the back of doing that crossing, you sort of sit there and go, actually, now I feel like I can. Not an expert, but I'm experienced enough to actually come out and talk about ocean rowing, expedition, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's a nice way of thinking about it. You've almost got this like dichotomy in a way. You've got two minds where you're this Royal Marine who's like you've got to be humble, and that's kind of reminded to you in your working environment. But then you're also this expeditionist who's done amazing things and has got a lot of lessons to teach and a lot of things that people can learn from. So it's bloody great that you are on this podcast and that you're putting yourself out there, because there are some people who are probably exactly who you were at like 17, 18, like don't think that they can do this sort of stuff, and then up pops like this guy called Matt Mason. They're like, oh shit, like this guy, like he used to be like me. That's sick.
Yeah, again, where I'm from is one of the biggest recruiting grounds for the military as well, because it's just, again, there's no industry, there's nothing there. The sort of working class towns that are dying, if you like, and there's a lot of disenfranchised kids, young people, mainly boys, but girls as well. So, if you can spread the word that, there is a big ocean out there, big world out there, and you can do pretty much anything you want as long as you put the graft in. That's an important lesson, because a lot of people think, a lot of things are given nowadays, and they don't want to really get out there and they don't understand that they've got to get out there and graft, and by graft they've got to graft till till the late hours to achieve stuff. So yeah, I'm sort of waffling there, but
No,
getting
you're
out
good,
there
mate.
and spreading the word, getting out there and spreading the word is certainly something that I'm sort of is a growing passion of mine for sure.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's really cool. And I want to get on to your Indian Ocean row because you're so fresh. That's one of the most exciting things about this conversation for me is like you literally just got back last week. So that's why I was so much looking forward to talking with you because there's that instant euphoria after achieving something so big. And then it's like, oh, we're sort of back now and like, what's for dinner?
Yeah, I mean, like life hits you hard when you get back. All of a sudden, I've gone from sitting on a boat with three other blokes for 71 days to, chasing the kids around a football pitch, which is excruciatingly painful after not walking for two and a bit months. So, it does come back, hit you in the face, but it's amazing. It's phenomenal. Family's everything to me. So, yeah, just happy to be back, mate.
So you did 4,500 nautical miles. You've gone from the southern western tip of Australia to Kenya in Africa. Um,
Northwestern tip. So a little
Northwestern
town
tip.
called Carnarvon. Yeah, a little town called Carnarvon. So there's a few places you can set off from in Australia, and you sort of work your way up the coast. And depending on where you want to end up, depends on where you want to start. So if you're going to aim for sort of the Seychelles or anywhere further north, you want to start further north so you get into the trade winds and currents a bit faster. Or if you want to hit Mauritius, which is where basically 95% of people that are trying to row the Indian Ocean, that's an island just off the coast of Madagascar. It's about 3,500 mile row. You'll start from a place called Geraldton, and that just means you're already low enough. You can take a bit of an angle further north, and then you're straight in. So yeah, where you want to end up is that depends on where you're going to start from.
How do you approach something that has never been done before? Because you've done now three world firsts. And I was thinking to myself, if you're looking at a challenge that you want to do, but it's never been done before and there's no blueprint, like where do you even start?
From an expedition sort of ocean rowing point of view, you start with the weather. That's the very first thing. You've got to start with the weather. And when I do talk in schools and stuff, you can have, I say to them, you can have 4 Olympic rowers on your boat. But if the weather's not right, you're not breaking records, you're not getting across. It doesn't matter. It's all about the weather. 70% of ocean rowing is weather. 30% is human power, right? So whatever the weather's doing, you're doing, if that makes sense. So you look at the wind, the currents, and the swell. They're the three main things. So you just got to analyze the currents, make sure that if they're really strong, which they are off the east coast of Africa, so you got this East African current that runs north and south, depending on where you enter it. Are we physically strong enough to get across this current, which we thought we were? So it can be a 3 to 5 knot current at this time of year, so during the monsoon, early monsoon. So, we know we're going to have to pull hard. And if we miss it, then we're in a world of hurt because we're going to end up in Somalia. So is that achievable? And we thought, yes. What's the sort of prevailing winds look like? Is it north to south? Is it east to west? How does that look like? So we realized that we were going to hopefully get some strong easterlies that were going to push us west. So, and then they came to sort of normal. So we thought this is doable. And then we had to ask the question, why has nobody ever done it? Apart from, I mean, one guy's done it as a solo, so we were the first team to ever do it. Is it because of the distance? Is it because actually you can just row to Mauritius or the Seychelles and you get an ocean crossing? And we spoke to some people that had done to Mauritius and the Seychelles. We're sort of like, why have you never just gone on to Africa? And the main reason was because, well, why would you? Why would you carry on? Why would you do another 1,200 miles when you can just stop in Mauritius, which is a beautiful island, and the Seychelles, honeymoon central, get off and have a pina colada? And you sort of sit there and go, oh, okay, you're right. So it's not necessarily down to the weather because it's utterly impossible. It's because it's an extra 1,200 mile passing some of the most exotic islands on earth where you could just jump off and have an holiday. And trust me, when we were rowing past these islands, we're thinking, should we be getting off and having a pina colada here?
You've always got like reward and punishment there. You've got like behind you Somalia, and then in front of you Mauritius. You're like, it's like cat and mouse, isn't it?
Oh yeah, honestly, it was torture. It was torture. But actually, that was all factored into the planning, really, because if planning, so when you're doing an expedition, for me personally, is always you've got your primary option, if you like. So that's what you want to be doing, and if you know everything on board, you've got your your chart plotters, your water maker, all that sort of stuff. You've got your secondary options. So if they break, you then got your your how you're going to navigate with the chart plotter, how you're going to make water, etc. And then you've got your tertiary. So you've always got 3 backup plans, pretty much for everything on board. And for the actual crossing itself, casualty drop-off points, if you like, on a mountain, your escape routes, all that sort of stuff. So for us, it was if we have something major go wrong, where we don't feel like we can get all the way across to Africa because the crew's going to have to cross or whatever. If we're low enough, we can nip into Mauritius. Secondary option then was Seychelles. So I mean, these are great options, right? So I mean, lads on the boat were trying to, oh mate, the water maker's broke. They're there just punching the water maker with a spanner. And you're like, what are you doing? Oh, Mauritius is there. Where are we going in? And then after sort of the Seychelles, depending on where we were, we might hit the north tip of Madagascar or whatever, depending on what we're closest. And then after that, once we passed sort of a certain latitude or longitude, it was right. Whatever happens now, we've got to get to Africa, otherwise we'll lose the boat. So
And
yeah,
by
it's
the
tough.
sounds of it, by the sounds of it, it was going smoothly, and then Madagascar was a turning point, and you got a cut to your face. And what can you tell me what happened there?
Yeah, so it wasn't me that got the cut. It was Ingo, Matt Inglesby, he's done 4 oceans as well, phenomenal ocean roller. So I mean, all the way across, we were having issues with stuff because the swell was that big. The Indian Ocean is notorious for really big seas, and I've done the North Atlantic, which when the storms came in, the seas were huge, but it was only really when the storms came in that we had these massive seas. But on the Indian Ocean, these massive seas were the average. So we're setting off and we absolutely flew across. When I said earlier about it's all about the weather and the currents and swell. Well, we had a really good current, but equally had on average probably 3 to 3.5 meter swells all the way across. I mean, that's the average. And we just got picked up and thrown across. So when you're in those sorts of conditions and you're on this little 27-foot rowing boat, we had oars snapping, always getting ripped out of oar gates, so we took 6 spare oar gates, and by, I don't know, the second or third week, we'd already used 3 of them. So I'm sat there thinking, like, this is a lot, more intense than we were anticipating. Water makers, the pump packed in due to, overheating or whatever. I mean, it was just non-stop. Things kept going wrong. But the big thing that hit the team was just off the coast of Madagascar. We'd had probably about 10 days of really tough rowing. We didn't really have the conditions with us. It had slowed down a bit, which was quite nice because it meant that we could have the cabin hatches open where we could air the water out, where it just got really intense because we're all covered in fungal infections and stuff. And it gives a bit of a break. And anyway, so we've done 10 really tough days, and we picked up a bit of current, and we worked out that actually rowing, we'd do a mile in, say, let's say 17 minutes, but not rowing, it'd take 20 minutes. Sorry, do you know what I mean? So we were only losing around about 3 minutes a mile. So with that in mind, let's get some rest. Get your heads down. So everybody got in the cabins, lock the deck down, tied everything down, so it was good to go. We had the conditions with us, and then I think it was about sort of 7 hours into the sleep, 8-hour sleep. So we only had an hour left before we were out rowing again. This train of a wave hit us. I mean, it was just a monster wave. You could hear it. It just picked the boat up and just threw us. We did a full capsize, rolled round, boat righted itself, and then we turned the light on. Obviously, chaos in the cabin, and Ingo had basically, the gimbal had smashed his face, and he had 3 serious lacerations across his face. So there was blood everywhere. We thought he'd probably broke his hand and broke his cheekbone, and he had broke his nose. And we called it the Battle of the Gimbal. So he got the piss ripped out of him for the rest of the trip for that, because he chose to fight a gimbal and lost. But it was a real serious moment on the expedition. That's the first time I capsized in 5 crossings, and it was utterly terrifying because you suddenly realise, again, it's the ocean just reminding you that it's in charge, and one wave can end everything. And I don't mean the expedition. It can, it can end your life if it chose to. And when you're in a cabin, if the boat doesn't self-right for whatever reason, even though they're designed to, it's pitch black. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, and you're going to be opening that cabin hatch, trying to get out or trying to self-right the boat, or however, whatever SOP we came up with. And ultimately you're going to be swimming for your life, trying to get a life raft out, and then trying to flag a ship down that's nearby. So it was a real reminder that life is really it's on a tightrope out there.
Was that a moment where the team, I mean, they're obviously going to be shaken up, but did that hit morale? And if so, like, how did you guys adapt to that hit?
It shook everybody up. So as soon as it happened, we were out on deck, pair anchor out, stabilize the boat, make sure that we're safe, then deal with Matt the casualty. Once we'd done that, we had 2 or 3 hours of downtime just to sort of decompress, sort of look at what happened, get a bit of sleep, just to bring yourself back down a bit. And then we're straight back out on the oars rowing, so straight back on the horse. And I think, what it initially hit morale because it made everybody suddenly realise this isn't a game. Certainly the more novice rowers on board, we hadn't capsized at that point. We'd had a couple of knockdowns, which are really close to capsizing. But it was a real shock to them to suddenly realise, hang on a minute, I could die. Yeah, this is serious stuff. And it actually made everybody up the game. So everybody all of a sudden was a lot more diligent on deck. I mean, they were diligent anyway, but it was almost to the point where they were being anal. It was really good to see. And the team came together, the training kicked in, the drills that we practiced shoreside before the expedition came into practice, and everybody just flipped and went up a level. And it was, really impressive to see.
I know that, did you guys have a mixed team, so you weren't all military on that boat? And did you find that for you, your marine training sort of kicks in those situations? And for the other guys who aren't in the military, how do you train for a situation like that?
But yeah, I think it did. There was 2 actual members of the military, serving members of the military on the team. We had one MOD policeman, Martingo, but this was his 4th expedition, so he's not a novice. He absolutely knows the score and knows what to do. And then we had a civilian, Jake, who had 0 experience prior to this crossing, and he went into this sort of, having never done an expedition. This was his first one, so he baptism with fire for Jake. But I think it's all about communication. You drill them shoreside, you explain to them, this is what can happen. If this happens, these are the 2 or 3 ways we can react, and depending on how we react, well, this will be the outcome. So, if something does happen that's serious, just listen to instruction. Listen to how the mirroring go. That'll tell you, what we need you to do right now. And I don't want any back chat. I don't want you just do it. And that happened, and straight away you're out. Lads were listening, just giving out that clear instruction. This is what we need to do, and this is why. And they just got on with it straight away. Again, just impressive to see. It's just phenomenal.
You speak about how these expeditions are actually only about 10% physical and 90% mental. Obviously, the situation with a capsize is like a finite situation where you've got to react within that moment. But how did you deal with just the ongoing mental slog of the expedition?
Yeah, I mean, I'm married, so I mean that's the best training on planet Earth you can do. No, I'm only joking. My wife did a phenomenal job. No, again, it's that going back to marine training, where every day you are just getting battered and thrashed. Every day is a grind. Every day is hard. So that, for me personally, that is the cornerstone of my ability to be resilient and just get on with the job. But then when you set off rowing, and I've asked Jake and Taff, and they were novice rowers about this. What was it that kept you going? When you couldn't give up. The couple of things kept coming up with them, and the first one is just never letting your team down. You see the other guys getting out and rowing, even when Ingo lacerated face, potential broken hand, broken nose. He didn't miss a shift after that. He was out and he was rowing every single shift. It's like inspiration, you know, these guys are doing it. I need to step up, and even though I'm knackered, they feel like I do. I've got to get on with it. I've got to keep rowing. So there's that. And then the other side is you just want to get off the boat. So you've got the only way to get off is to keep rowing. You've got to row. You know, you've got to get out. You cannot turn, you know, it's not like you climb a mountain where you can turn around and just walk down. You are, once you step off and you get, I don't know, 200 mile off land, you're not turning around and coming back because the currents, unless you're getting towed back, but the currents, and that's going to cost you a fortune. So the currents and the wind just means that once you set off, there's no getting off until the other side. So there's that understanding as well, that if you don't want to row, that's fine, but it's going to take you another 10 days to get there. So it's up to you. You know, the choice is in your hands.
It's like the cold realities of it, and that like you want to stop, but the only way you can stop is to keep going. And I guess like that's an adventure you've signed up for, an adventure that you've planned for months or years in advance, and now you're actually there and you're doing it, and the only thing you can think about is finishing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've been on boats where people have turned around and gone, listen, we need to get off this. There's a storm coming. We need to get off. And you sort of go, okay, well, we can sort of get a tour, but that's going to cost us, you know, a lot of money. So are you going to pay for that? Because I'm not paying for it. Here's why you can't afford it. I can't afford it. So are you going to pay for it? And then all of a sudden you realize that you're too poor to afford a tour, you know, because the storm's coming or whatever. So, you know, we're a pickup from a ship where they change direction for 200 miles to come and pick you up again. You know, unless it's a medical emergency, you've got to pay for it. From my experience, I mean, it might be different with different ships, but you know, a lot of people have told me they've had huge bills off the back of being picked up. So the harsh reality is, once you start, unless you're minted, you got to keep going.
I can see how that would be a massive motivator actually. And on that idea of like preparing for something for so long, you're already making that mental commitment to this expedition like way in advance, because you've got to do all the admin, the sponsors to make this thing happen. And I listened to a radio extract of audio right after you had completed this expedition, and you were saying that it was the toughest thing that you've ever done in your life. And I thought that that is no light statement from a Royal Marine who's done 3 tours of Afghanistan and 3 world firsts on an ocean road before. What was it about this specific expedition that you found so tough?
Yeah, this and the north are very similar. But the thing with the North Atlantic is, because it was cooler, it was a lot colder. When you actually got in the cabin, you weren't sweating. You're just getting your nice sleeping bag. It'd be a little bit damp, but you get your nice sleeping bag and you have a great sleep. Whereas with the Indian Ocean, because we're approaching, you know, we're trying to aim for just south of the equator. Once we got in the cabin, it was like a sauna. So quite often on ocean rows, if you know the swells, you know, everybody will always say, "Oh, lock the cabin hatches." You know, they'll be on full lock all the time. And anybody that says that's it's just utter nonsense. You know, in sweltering heat, you'll have them on vent, so they won't be fully open, but they'll be on vent just to let this tiny little air gap come through, just to give you a little bit of air. But in the conditions we were in, which were average 3.5 meter swells, we just could not do that. You know, the only time the cabin hatches were really open was when we were um, you know, getting out on deck, changing shifts. So we'd come in wet through, so you're getting absolutely drenched every other wave, because it's just swamping the deck, which is good because it means we're going really fast, but bad because we're just constantly wet, right? So then you get into the cabin and then you're on full lockdown, and that's meant you're in the sauna, so your skin just could not dry. You just could not get comfy. Everything was just damp, sometimes sodden. And then that meant on the other side that we started all getting fungal infections. So I mean, I've still got scars really from the spots and the fungal infection on my legs at the minute. I hope they go. But all under your armpits, everything that where you expect it to be, chafage, really, you know, really painful infections. So that for us was, I think for everybody on the team, was really, really difficult, because it's, you know, it's then not enjoyable. It is, you know, when you're rowing, which is meant to be a bit of relief from the cabin, you're just in bits, your armpits are in bits, your crotch area is just in utter pain, your bottom is just, it's just agony. So really difficult to administer yourself and look after yourself and look after your body. So that was a massive morale dipper on the boat for sure. And that's what ultimately I think, made it the hardest role for me was those just having the living conditions, not the ocean itself, just the living conditions.
Yeah, that surprised me to hear that the cabin was almost a break, like, oh, sorry, rowing was a break from the cabin, because usually you'd think like the cabin's a break from the rowing, but that would be like your sort of nice place after you've had a tough row. But sounds like you were just looking forward to getting out of the sweltering heat of it all. And thanks for taking me through like all the detail of it. I feel like we could just keep talking on about this and about all of your adventures, but I know that you've got a documentary coming up, Man versus Ocean. What can we expect from that?
So yeah, it's not coming out probably another year a bit. We've got one more ocean to do. We don't know when that's going to be. So we're in the process of compiling all the footage. We've got a full documentary team. Nexus Pictures are running with it. But it's basically about a journey across every ocean on Earth, and not just my journey, but also the people that are left at home. So my wife and children's journey, and anybody else that's been on these expeditions. Sort of Ingo for sure. His family's. Um, because it's just as testing for them, isn't it? We're out rowing oceans, having fun, doing that sort of stuff. And quite often, like on military operations, you've got your families at home not knowing if you're safe, just sat there waiting for that phone call. And it is, I can tell you, it's far easier rowing than it is to be sat at home waiting for your loved one to call to tell them everything's all right and, what time they're going to be getting in and all that sort of stuff. So, it's much about their journey as it is sort of mine across these oceans. So, it's really exciting. We don't know where it's going to go. We don't know when it's going to be released. But we've got one more ocean to do before the real editing starts taking place, and we know how the documentary looks and all that sort of stuff. So exciting times.
Very exciting, mate. Thank you for coming on and talking about your experience on such an amazing feat. And yeah, cheers for sharing your adventurous mindset and like what it really takes and the realities of all of this. Because sometimes you look at it, you're like, wow, that looks so cool, that looks amazing. And yeah, then you get into the real stuff. So cheers for sharing that with us.
Yeah, no worries, Jake. Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
Cheers, mate.